open mic for this week is an album or a project that I go on about a fair old bit, which is interesting, and I'll tell you why in a bit. But I'm looking at... it's English, and it's still a weird word. Ironiclast. It is the debut album from the Damn Things. Damn Things are a New York-based hard rock, heavy metal supergroup. They are made up of Keith Buckley. Well, for this album, it was Keith Buckley from Every Time I Die, Rob Caggiano, then of Anthrax, along with Scott Ian, still of Anthrax, Joe Troman and Andy Hurley of Fall Out Boy, and although he's not appeared on the album, Josh Noonan at this time was playing with the Damn Things. He was at the time the bassist of Every Time I Die as well. I think at the time when the album came out, he was just a live performer and then joined as a full-time thing, and now he's since left. We'll get into that more in a bit. For everyone's main band at the time, so in terms of Anthrax, they hadn't released an album since We've Come For You All in 2003, by which point John Bush had left. It'd be replaced by Anthrax's old vocalist Joey Belladonna, and they were less than a year away from releasing Worship Music that came out in 2011. Fall Out Boy had split the year prior, and at this point Joe and Andy, from my recollection, hadn't done anything. I think Enabler came later, and so did With Knives, gets them a little bit later on. And Every Time I Die were a year removed from releasing New Junk Aesthetic. So it was kind of like in the middle period for everyone involved. There was no clashes with other projects or anything like that. It was more a spare time kind of thing, or a lead up to something that came later on. And like I was saying, I go on about this album a fair old bit, and you'd think that's because I've listened to the album, it's one of my favourite albums of all time, blah 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 blah. This was the first time I'd ever listened to this album in full. I'd listened to We've Got Situation Here a lot. I've really enjoyed that song, but for whatever reason I just never went into the album in full. And the reason why I got on about it is I was excited by the idea of this project because the talent involved are incredible. You've got guys from Anthrax who I really enjoy. Every Time I Die, limited experience I've had with them, I enjoyed them. Fall Out Boy, I really fucking enjoyed as well. Reunion. And it was Andy and Joe that more recently was the reason why I want to go back and listen to this album, because up to Folie à Dieu, and including Folie à Dieu, they were fantastic musicians in Fall Out Boy. Joe's guitar work helped separate Fall Out Boy from other pop punk bands. Andy has this huge history of playing with hardcore bands, and so I thought this would give him a chance for some of that to leak through. And I just thought, combine them with this the other plethora of musicians in this project. Scott Ian has played with a crossover band before. You've got guys of Every Time I Die. I thought this was going to be a really interesting hardcore album on paper. And it's anything but that. It is anything but. Straight away into Handbook for the Recently Deceased, it is so much more of an 80s glam rock influence than I ever expected. It is not cheesy lyrically, but somehow cheesy musically, and I don't know if that makes sense or not. But Keith on the chorus sounds fucking colossal. He sounds so amazing. And like I said, I had limited experience of Every Time I Die going into this, and to hear, I've heard little snippets of his clean singing before, but he can hit those notes better than most. I couldn't think of anyone who could hit that kind of thing better off the top of my head, but then off the top of my head is really shit when I've ever turned the microphone on. Andy's drum work, it does what I was going on about before, about a chance for him to bring in some more hardcore playing. It's not blast beats by any means, but the first half of the chorus, I can't tell if it's a double kick. That probably sounds terrifying or really inappropriate on mic, But that it's I can't tell if it's double kick bass or if it's like a tom roll, but it just sounds so. I hate this. It's a really shit word to you, but so epic. And even though it's the chorus, it feels like it's building up with something bigger. And then they play through the chorus a second time, and he's got a different drum beat. And because of what he's done, that like low drumming sound before, the second chorus now sounds fucking so much bigger than the exact same thing that happened before. More tea, sorry. My tea's gone cold and I'm sad. Disgusting. Where was I? And the 80s rock tropes sort of bleed into Bad Blood. And when I was saying before, like, musically it's kind of cheesy, but I'm not quite sure. I know exactly what's so fucking cheesy about the song. It's got fucking hand claps and castanets in it. Fucking, yeah. Fucking, why not? Why not, eh? Why not? Fucking, that's the wrong hand clap, but still, castanets. I can't do a castanet sound. And that leads into Friday Night Going Down in Flames. And that rounds out one of the best opening three salvos from an album. Like, I was comparing this to... I was comparing it, now I'm not 100% sure about Black Album, but definitely American Idiot by Green Day, and even possibly Out Come the Wolves by Rancid. Blind. These songs are so full of energy, and Keith's soaring vocals. I always go for like the chorus vocals, don't I? Keith on them sound fucking incredible, and it is such a stark contrast from what he's doing in Every Time I Die. It goes into, we've got a situation here, which was the lead single from the album, and I think this is one of the few songs where it bleeds in someone else's project into the band, because it's got a lot of like the southern rock kind of stuff from Every Time I Die sound in here. And yeah, like I said, I can hear it more here than I can anywhere else. There's a lot of blues in the rest of the album, which is one thing, but there's distinct like southern rock vibe coming from this song that I can't quite put my finger on well. And speaking of the blues, Blackheart bounces between this like blues rock sort of like draped in attitude, swaggery sort of thing, with the more high energy octane. I hear that phrase a lot, high energy octane. I have no idea what octane even means, but the more high energy thing that hard rock likes to do. And A Great Reckoning. So after A Great Reckoning, which the song itself, it kind of feels like a blues-tinged ballad. Well, the blues-tinged ballad. Fucking hell. I was doing so well, wasn't I? Oh well. A Great Reckoning feels like the blues-tinged ballad for the album. And it shows off not only Keith's vocals, but the backing vocals, which were... oh, damn near everyone. It was Rob, Scott, and Joe. The layering that they gives Keith's vocals that much more punch in delivery, which is a really subtle thing to do, but it is tremendously effective, and it does make those choruses and Keith just in general sound that much bigger, that much more active and alive. But after A Great Reckoning, it does dip a bit. Like, Little Darling is just barely saved by Keith on the chorus again. Similar to that thing I was saying about Anders in the In Flames album. It's, really, really good chorus performances. And so you got Little Darling saved by that. The Blues Having Blues has a couple of little like fun vocal hooks in there. But overall, the last 4 songs of the album are quite... it's a bit of a drop. They are not... whereas like the first portion of the album are super catchy and super like earworm, these are quite generic, I feel. And it is a kind of a bummer way to end the album, but the first half of the album has already got you fucking salivating anyway, so the first half I think does make up for it. It's one of those rare occasions where the first half will make up for a dodgy bottom, I guess. The album in general is a case of the whole is far more interesting than the sum of its parts. And that's not a knock on any of the albums, except for like post 2013 Fall Out Boy. But on paper, a supergroup of made up of members. I'm going to try that again. On paper, a supergroup made up of members from Every Time I Die, Fall Out Boy, and Anthrax. They are three bands on very different ends of the musical spectrum. And as I said before, on paper, I kind of thought it'd be more of a hardcore tinged thing or more of a crossover kind of thing. But I don't know many people who would have guessed that this is what it would sound like. Especially when I think I read the origins of the album came between Joe Troman and Scott Ian meeting some like a gig or something or a festival and just like exchanging ideas and writing together. And it's so the formative periods came from Anthrax and Fall Out Boy. You know, it's not like that's not your first guess, I think. For me, though, the album is crazy catchy, and I've really, really fucking enjoyed it. It's a case of, because of how good those first 6 or 7 songs are, the last few you just can't ignore them. And yeah, it's, I think with Cells was the latest song out. The music video for that is fucking hysterical. But it has definitely got me hyped for High Crimes, which is coming out the 26th of April. As like an idea of what happened after the album, so this came out in like 2010, so we're coming up to like just under 10 years since the Damn Things album. Keith continued on with Every Time I Die and formed an electro indie project called Tape with Joshua Hurley. Caggiano would leave Anthrax in 2013 following Worship Music and would quickly join Volbeat from Denmark and has since released 2 albums with them. And he even confirmed his exit from the Damn Things. I believe it was earlier this year. I remember reporting it, but I'm pretty sure it's this side of Christmas. Scott Ian is still the long-standing rhythm guitarist of Anthrax, and he released Worship Music and then For All Kings. And at the moment, he likes hanging out on Game of Thrones, pretending to be a White Walker, whatever that means, and on The Walking Dead as just a normal walker, which I guess is just less racist, I guess. I don't watch TV. Troman and Hurley unfortunately went back to Fall Out Boy. They reformed it in 2013, and it was before people realised we didn't want that anymore. Andy has also played with hardcore band Enabler for their 2012 album All Hail the Void, which I remember being quite excellent. And Joe would actually form a spacey punk duo called With Knives with Josh Newton. They released an EP called Schadenfreude in April 2012, and speaking of the devil, Josh Newton, he would leave Every Time I Die in 2011 and reform Shiner the year later. And he's filled in for live shows and has worked as a fucking bass tech and guitar tech for Fall Out Boy, Band of Horses, and I think most recently he's a tech for Kings of Leon. And when the Damn Things came out with their new song Cells and like we're back kind of thing, it was with Keith, with Scott, with Joe, with Hurley, with Andy Hurley, and it's also with now bit of a list. Now it's with Dan Andriano from the Alkaline Trio. So he's a new bassist for the new album High Crimes, and to confirm, Rob and Josh are no longer part of the project, which is fair. If like to go into this album, I reckon it's like I said, there's a lot of like old school like 80s hard rock, glam in the loosest form, but still like that cheesy, but just the overall cheesiness of that kind of scene in here a lot. So if I was going to make comparisons from a scene I know nothing about with that 80s glam rock, with a bit of research, I heard comparisons with Maylene and the Sons of Disaster. Personally, I'd throw in there Volbeat as well, and more latter day Motorhead. Obviously, Lemmy and Keith have very different style of vocals, but the one song that keeps playing in my head is Get Back in Line from I don't think it was Bad Magic. I think it wasn't After. Was it Aftershock? Might have been Aftershock. Um, but even Lemmy, towards like later stages of his career, was hitting those big soaring notes that I think Keith does to a similar degree. So yeah, more fucking hell. I did so well not to punch you all day. I'm sorry. More Latter Day, Motorhead. I think Volbeat's a good shout, as is the one I found online, which is Mainly in the Sun's Disaster. Go for any of them, or just overall fun rock music in general. I recommend The Damn Things with Ironiclast. It came out in 2010. There's a new album coming out in April, and I think it will be pretty darn good.